Hello and welcome to Gamers Relics with me, Nabil Aziz. And in this interview, I'm interviewing Chris Roberts with guest Declan, and we're going to ask him questions about the engine of the game and just general questions about the game itself. Enjoy. Good. Right, that's fine. So, how's your day been so far? Yeah.
No, it's all right. It's the morning here, so it's like 10:30 here.
Okay. Yeah, I heard about the that Hurricane Sandy. It's not your area affected, or have you heard any news about it recently?
Well, yeah, I was just a couple of our team members, like Ben Lesnick, is in Washington at the moment. He's moving down to Austin after Thanksgiving. He basically him and we had someone else that was helping us on the customer service side. That they're in the East Coast, so they both got knocked out by the hurricane in terms of losing the power and internet. I mean, they're both fine. It's just that a huge part of the northeast of America was knocked out by the hurricane. So
As long as they're okay, it's good.
yeah, no, he's all good. So so he's back online. There's emails from him flying around today, so he's answering messages. So that's good.
Right. So I've got a friend who he's got some relatives in North Carolina, and the employees just don't care about him. They just said, "You better get to work." Yeah, I don't care if there's a hurricane. Just get to work. It's just
that's America for you.
Yeah,
it's all about work.
I mean, I've noticed with like many of the interviews, like the people usually ask questions that just straight to the point. I mean, personally, with our site, we're more like we know like you're a gamer yourself, like as you've said through all the other dev questions and stuff you've done. So this isn't like a typical business interview. We're just like gonna have like a normal chat and everything else.
Yeah, no problem. No, that's great. I'm down with that. I make games because I want to play them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're looking for. I mean, it's just like you've said. It's like with publishers, they just ruin. They're in it for the money. But obviously, you wanna make a game you want personally.
Yeah, no, we'll tell you. Well, I think that that's anytime when you get to be sort of big business, and then you've got you're public and you got stockholders. I mean, the stockholders, maybe there's a few that care about whether you make good games, but most of them, the only reason why they would care is that if you make good games, you'll sell more copies. They've invested in something, they want to make money. So that's kind of what sort of drives a lot of the bigger companies. I mean, I personally think you make a good game, you'll sell lots of copies, so you'll make money. So just make a good game, and that's all you need to do. Whenever a company gets bigger, it's sort of, I think it loses a little bit of that focus. I mean, I don't think it's specific to Activision or EA or anyone. I mean, it's just what happens when companies get bigger. So that's kind of why I prefer to sort of stay smaller and not be part of a bigger thing.
Mm. I mean, obviously, you've been to these publishers with EA and stuff. So, is there anything you would say about them that you wouldn't usually say in Open Doors?
Well, I can't say any like that over an interview. No, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I know them. I mean, I know them all, and I was part of EA for a while, and obviously, the same thing with Microsoft. So, the individuals and people, most of them are all good people. It's just the nature of a big company.
Yeah.
And that has got much more to do with it than anyone's inherently evil. It's just the dynamic of the company is different than it would be if you were sort of a small developer or even a smaller company like the way Origin used to be all those years ago. And I think that's more to do with why they do things, and then just it's also the money's involved. So there's a big investment every time they build a game, and they're building a console game, and they spend because they're bigger and have much larger overheads. It's hard for a big studio to build, a big publisher to build a game on a console for less than, say, 30 million, 20, 30 million, sometimes more. And then, of course, when they're doing that many units, then they need to sell, at least 3 million units to be making a profit, and they want to be selling more than that. And, of course, with Sony and Microsoft, you can't, it's not like on demand, it's not digital, so you've actually got to pay for your units up front, and the average cost of it, including the license fee, is say $10, right? It's a little less than that, but I'll just say $10 to be simple. So 3 million units, which is just doing a little better than breaking even, is $30 million. So you're already at $60 million then, and then once you're in that much, they're like, well, we better be marketing it, so they'll throw another 20 or 30 in for the marketing, and then they probably want to do a little more than 3 million because they need to pay for that marketing. So, by the time it's all said and done, they're $100 million in as an investment into a game, and it hasn't even, sold any units yet. So if it doesn't sell any, I don't want to play politics. I don't want to deal with all that kind of stuff. I just want to sit there and make games.
Yeah. I mean, with the game in hand, Star Citizen. I mean, I've played the previous games, like Wing Commander and stuff. I've also been playing a lot of EVE Online recently. Like, that's been my biggest MMO recently. Like, I've played every MMO that's came out. I've always played, like, Guild Wars, this really old one called Fly, World of Warcraft, Aeon. And then I played EVE because mainly, as you were saying, it's more, like, towards a hardcore audience because I'm more into those type of games. I mean, with the Star Citizen game coming out, what type of consequences will there be, like, in terms of dying, that kind of thing?
Well, yeah, there's been a bunch of talk on all the forums about permadeath and not permadeath. So I think something that will be part of the balancing process, which is kind of also the other reason why I kind of like having a early sort of backer community that is part of the alpha and the beta process, so we can basically test and balance the game together versus me making some guesses and then releasing it in the wild to the general public. And if you get it wrong, it's everyone's screaming at you.
Yeah.
But I want to I kind of want to balance, so I don't want it to be like completely. I mean, I've used Demon Souls as an example because I did like that as a game a lot, as sort of something where I sort of felt like it kind of reminded me of what's good about having consequences to screwing up in a game, because I do feel like too many of the modern games, especially sort of console ones, there's no downside to dying.
Yeah, definitely.
So you just charge through a level and you just go in guns blazing. You don't even bother to sneak in or get cover or anything like that. Like when I'm playing a sort of console shooter, I don't care. It's like I get killed, so what? I respawn 1 second earlier. So I actually kind of had much more sense of accomplishment when I was finishing boss monsters in Demon Souls than I did playing
such an annoying game.
Well, it is annoying, but the thing was that it was, I would like to say, the way I view it, Demon Souls, it was the most frustrating and the most rewarding game I played, because it was like incredibly frustrating when you like get almost the way to the end and then you make some stupid mistake because you were like you were thinking about getting to the boss monster or doing something, and then you would like die when you shouldn't die, and you were like so annoyed with yourself. So it was the one that I almost threw my control. I certainly swore a lot, and I almost threw my controller at my TV set a few times. But there was a sense of, when you accomplished it, you had a sense of reward because it was difficult to get there. So I don't think that Star Citizen should be to that extreme, because it was too much, I think. But I definitely think there needs to be some level of sort of achievement or difficulty. So everything's not easy. It's like, okay, you get blasted in a dogfight and bam, you're instantly back in the dogfight 1 second later. That wouldn't be cool. So I kind of, my take on it, although we'll obviously balance it, is that when you get destroyed out in space, then we're not going to have sort of permadeath in that you lose everything and your character's gone, but you'll probably have insurance on your spaceship, and you'll basically go back, you'll get picked up and you'll end back on the closest safe planet, and your ship will be there, but you've lost your cargo or your upgrades. And if you wanted to, you could probably buy some insurance on some of that. But it still should be kind of a bit of a pain in the ass. I mean, it should be like having a car accident in real life. Even if you got insurance, even if it's a fault, it's still a pain, right? It's not like instantly after a car accident, a brand new car materializes 2 feet away and you get into it. I mean, it's a pain to deal with it. So I sort of feel like it should be along those lines, where you're not going to lose everything, but it is kind of a bit of a pain when you get destroyed. So it's not like you get put right back in the same place in the trade run you were. So you're basically, it's kind of the way I view it is a little bit like, if you remember the Wing Commander, it's like there wasn't any saves in the mission. It was just, if you managed to complete the mission, then you would advance to the next sort of mission. So I kind of like that. It's sort of like you have basically lost what you sort of your progress you got while you were flying out in space, and you may have lost your cargo and you may have lost some of your upgrades. So I think as a ramification, it wouldn't be something that you'd want to have happen all the time. At least you could sort of get back up there and try to get it all back again, kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess what I can also say is the main reason why I see a lot of people, wanting this game is because it's just been such a long time since a good, space simulator has come out. I mean, obviously there was Freelancer, one of the good ones, but obviously Microsoft decided to drop that, as you know, and
Yep.
just people just just been dying for it, including myself, and that's the reason why I've been playing Eve, because that's the closest you could really get till the next big thing was going to come out. I mean, I don't know if you heard of X3, but that
Oh,
was
I've heard of it. I have to check it out because a lot of people are refer to it. I need to check it out, but I haven't actually played any of the X series, so uh,
it comes close, but it is a bit. I mean, the micromanagement in that is a bit weird. You need like loads of scripts to run that game, so
I really.
yeah, I didn't really get into that. But yeah, this game is pretty much what a lot of people have been waiting for. It's just
Well, no, I hope so.
yeah,
It's a game I like to play. I mean, it's sort of like a combination of I like all that. I like the idea of sort of the open universe and the trading and everything that we had in Privateer and Freelancer. But I also like the idea of it sort of being in the cockpit and the dogfighting and not being a sort of I mean, the way I look at Eve is it sort of feels a bit removed and strategic to me. There's certainly there's nothing wrong with it. It's a different kind of game. It's sort of like the difference between an RTS game and a first-person shooter, right? I mean, it doesn't mean one's better than the other one. They're just different kind of flavors. So for me, I prefer the sitting in the cockpit flavor and the dogfight part of it, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, a lot of people just think it's just orbiting, orbiting F1.
Yeah, well, yeah. I didn't get too far into the Eve progression, but the few times that I tried to play it over the years, that was my biggest problem. Was just I kind of want the very beginning part of the experience. You need to get in the cockpit and have fun, and it's kind of cool, and there's lots of eye candy, and you feel like you blow up a say an NPC like pirate that isn't very tough, and you're like kind of happy with yourself. I mean, I just think that that's what you want because that's sort of the fantasy you've got. So once you have that experience at the beginning, then you'll be hooked.
Yeah,
and then you can rank the difficulty and play against other players, and I think that's kind of the way I view it. So I sort of feel like, and I feel like when I tried playing Eve and I try to get into it, I feel like the beginning experience I'm not getting enough of that reward. But
yeah, definitely. No, I know what you mean. Apart from that, like obviously you've shown the space side. I mean, is there any plans for like planet side, like colonization and that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, when we go live with the Prison Universe, the planet side stuff's going to be like Freelancer and Privateer. So you'll be able to sort of land on the planet, but you won't be wandering around in first person. It'll be sort of you'll see a view of the landing pad, and you'll see say a space bar off to a corner, and a ship dealer, and a commodities dealer, and you can essentially click on any one of these locations, and then it'll cut to you walking inside, and there'll be in the bar a bartender and people sitting at tables, and you can the NPCs you can click on to get missions, and there'll be other players or avatars around. So in the early iterations of the stuff, that's kind of the level it'll be at. But the one nice thing about the engine that we're using is down the road that I won't rule out that we could add more detail to areas on the planets. It's just that from now on, my focus is getting all the space stuff working. There's already a lot of people already going, you're promising too much. How are you going to get it all done?
Yeah.
I've made this kind of game a few times before, so I kind of know what I'm getting into. I feel like it appears to be more than it really is, because there's a lot of advantages to being in space and stuff. But I'm focused on the space side. So, in space, you're in first person, even when you're aboard a bigger ship, and we'll have all that sort of stuff. And then planet side stuff will be more like Privateer and Freelancer. And then, as time goes on, hopefully we have a strong community and the game's doing well. Then obviously those are things that you can roll out down the road. But, the biggest reason not to have the planet side in first person is just the amount of content you'd have to build would be insane because it's first person levels that have a lot of detail and content.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, just another question. So, I mean, in term, obviously you have the combat and everything else, but like a laid back kind of thing. Like, is there any plans for like just a laid back activity? Like, let's say you wanted to play, poker, and you said there was there's hangout. Like,
Well, in terms of, I don't think right now I'm not planning on any mini games. So unless
Sorry,
I've
I
got.
sneezed.
Well, you never know because there's always some superstar programmer in your team that's decided that he's going to implement a mini game one evening. But currently, it's not on the design document. So the idea is sort of hanging out in the bars or chatting to people will be about sort of finding missions and talking to other people.
no, that's okay. But yeah, I mean, it'd be great to see something like that later on in the game, which obviously more people would.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like something like a mini game, like being able to play poker or something and go to a casino planet, probably isn't that difficult to do because those games are fairly simple to implement.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, that would be something that someone, we've launched, everything's going well. You could probably implement it, and it wouldn't take too much effort to do. But that's kind of why I like the online model too, right? The whole idea is you sort of get the game out there, and then you're constantly sort of improving and adding stuff to it, as opposed to a old-fashioned one that you put on a disc. And
Yeah, definitely.
that one is you basically got to put it all on the disc because if you haven't put it on the disc, you don't get it. So that's why everyone works so hard to put so much on all the sort of console titles.
Yeah.
And I much prefer, hey, let's get the game working, and then as we go along, let's add stuff. And to be honest, I'm quite happy also to having a certain amount of the community participation. You sort of, like you've noticed on the site, we've been running polls, but yeah, I mean, if we had the bandwidth and down the road, we've got a bunch of the other stuff, the key stuff we wanted to implement, and we say, hey, do you want to have a casino planet and have a poll? And if you got enough people say, yeah, I'd love to play poker or blackjack or whatever,
people would agree to that.
yeah, you could probably implement it. I mean, that would be that would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, on that note, like you were saying, like in the old days, I mean, recently with the Assassin's Creed 3 game that came out, they had the day one patch with like 44 fixes. I mean, if it was like 20 years ago, obviously the QA team would have been forced to fix those. But now, just obviously because the publishers, they might have, I don't know if they were a bit lazy, but what I mean, like people without internet connections, they've just basically failed it there.
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing that they needed so many things to fix and patch at the very beginning because normally you like wonder how did it get past the Microsoft and the Sony QC process.
Yeah, I got my friend here, Declan. He's got some questions about the engine.
Hi. I was just going to talk about because there's a lot of balance between like arcade and simulation. Like some people go straight for simulation, which is complete simulation, and sometimes it comes out as not as fun as you'd hope it to be, and they have to like balance between arcade and simulation. I was just wondering how you were going on
that. Well, so underlying it all, it actually runs as a proper simulation. But what I do on top of it is that the sort of how you ever want to describe it, the fly-by-wire model or whatever, sort of makes it feel more arcadey, so to speak. But the actual simulation itself is 100% correct. But essentially, the ship's computer that's taking your input is sort of doing it in the way that all the wing commanders have, which is essentially when you have your joystick and you want to pitch, you want to roll, or you want to yaw. Those inputs are telling the ship that it wants to do that, and then it's always trying to set your velocity to be in the heading of wherever the front of the ship's pointing. So what happens is if you pitch a roll and you've got a speed setting high enough, where the physics comes in is that with the thrusters and the whole setup that's on the ship, that won't instantly happen because it actually has to apply thrust to different parts of the ship to change the orientation of the ship and change the velocity vector of the ship. So from a user standpoint, it feels pretty simple to fly. It's nothing too complicated. Certainly not as complicated as flying a real plane. But the physics underneath it, it's all correct. And so the good thing about that means is there's some subtleties to the things that happen. It also means that you'll be able to turn off some of the fly-by-wire features, and if you really want to get into it, like do some sort of more fancy maneuvers. And it also means that like when you damage parts of the ship, because the ship's built of all these, hundreds of components, and you would damage one of the thrusters or a different thruster, it will have an effect on what's happening, and it's all sort of modeled in the system. So it's not a ben or anything. It all falls out of the physical modeling, which is kind of nice. So what I think it's going to do is it's going to have the top end sort of same easy approachability that the Wing Commander style games have had. But underneath it, there's just a lot more. There's a lot more variety and subtlety, and there's a lot more things that these sort of more expert players will be able to sort of play and tweak.
Yeah, because I play a game called Il-2 Sturmovik. Have you heard of that game?
Yeah, I haven't played it, but yeah, it's pretty hardcore though, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing game. It's very gamey. Like it's got them arcade elements, which is fun to play. I mean, there's dogfighting in it. It's amazing. But with flight simulators, all it applies to is just complete simulation. But with Il-2 Sturmovik, it's more of a game and more of a dogfighting game, and it's great. Like when you hit the wing, like the wing can come off, or if you're coming down very very fast, like the air velocity and the air resistance will rip your wings off if you're going too fast. Like in space, really, there's nothing like that, and it's going to be hard to really see how it will affect, and if it will be fun or not, because dogfighting is completely different in planes to spaceships, because there's no air resistance or there's no airspeed really, and there's no stalling to worry about.
Well, I think there's a couple of. I mean, first off, the Star Wars style dogfighting, which is what Wing Commander is and what Star Citizen will have, is really modeled after World War II dogfighting, right? I mean, if you were thinking about a proper space simulator and how combat would happen, which is, why I think it's always silly when there's these big arguments about like realism, is that, though you'd be like traveling at ridiculous speeds, you'd never see your enemy. It would all be, your computer would calculate the trajectories and where your shots and missiles would go, and it would be completely out of the pilot's hand, and you would never see your enemy. And by the way, even in today's aerial combat, a lot of it's like that, right? Most of the combat happens beyond visual range now. So I don't think that's kind of fun. The fun thing is seeing the enemy in your sights, like when you were watching Star Wars or whatever. So we do things to make it closer. Like we limit the top speed, and we also do some stuff that will make it feel more like dogfighting. But even though you don't have drag or resistance, there is impact on your sort of physical simulation if you, like, say, lose a wing or lose a part of your ship, because it'll change your center of mass, and therefore it will change how you can rotate or orientate yourself. And so I mean, there is a lot of stuff that can happen that's along that, and that's one of the reasons why we built the system with the ships with all the different components, so they can get damaged or destroyed or break up. There will hopefully be at least as much, if not more, sort of cool detail like that you'll see when you're dogfighting someone. So your wings may not rip off because you're in a dive that's going too fast, but there'll be other bits where you'll be shooting people, and if you shoot off a part of their ship, it'll change the way that they can maneuver. Just from a sort of momentum and mass issue, even if you didn't hit one of the thrusters.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was wondering also about the scale of the world. Like in EVE Online, you have these like little hubs around like gates and stuff. When you're traveling to like another area or another station, like, will you have to like physically fly there, or there's some sort of warp system or something like that?
Yeah, no. Basically, I mean, the way it's going to work is it'll be similar to sort of the Wing Commander Privateer style and a little bit the Freelancer style, where you're essentially you'll be on a planet, you'll launch into orbit around the planet, and you'll decide, okay, well, I wanted to go to this other planet, and maybe you have to make some jump points to get there, maybe you won't, but essentially you select it on your navigation map, and then you'll hit autopilot or warp, so you'll head towards the nearest jump point, or if it was a planet in the system, the planet. And if the sort of persistent universe server decides that you're going to run into someone that will be in conflict with you, like whether it's NPC pirates or another a player or something like that, they'll drop you out into a sort of local instance to have the combat, and then you'll be in that instance until the combat's finished, and then once it's finished, you can hit A or whatever it would be to essentially carry on your way, like you did in the old Wing Commander games.
That's cool.
But we're not going to have a whole solar system, like in world correctly, because the size and scale of that is not practical with floating point. So there's floating point's always got precision issues. So the problem with floating point is it can handle like very big numbers, but when you handle the big numbers, then it loses the small precision. So what happens is you don't want to be in that situation, because a lot of times the small precision, like if you're in the cockpit, there's a lot of things that are under a meter in size, right? So like your fingers and hands and some of the movements you do and the rendering, that's all well under a meter in scale. But of course, if you're in space, I mean, we're talking about thousands of kilometers, if not hundreds or millions of kilometers. And so when you get up into those numbers, then it doesn't have the precision to deal with the small stuff that would say be in your cockpit. So it basically that sort of creates sort of all sorts of problems with the physics system and the animation system. So you really kind of need to sort of limit the sort of areas in space to a reasonable amount. So that's kind of what happens in most games. I mean, we have a big problem because most say like a crisis game, their maps are no bigger than a kilometer or so, or a couple of kilometers in size, and even the instances that we'll do the combats in, we're like hundreds of kilometers in size, right? So it's a challenge, but basically you won't be able to just sit in your plane and put full speed on and come back and 4 days later and see that you've arrived at another planet. That won't be possible.
Oh, okay. I think that's all my questions.
No problem. No problem at all. Well, thanks for being supporters and covering it. And you want some more, a few more questions? I'd be happy to answer them for you. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, fun. I mean, hopefully it'll be interesting to see what you guys think when you get to play around with this sort of single, the multiplayer dogfighting stuff in about 12 months' time, which that'll be the first stage. So hopefully that'll be fun for everyone, but it'll be interesting because we'll get to balance everything and see what everyone thinks, and then we'll be carrying on, but it'll be fun.
Chris,
hey, it's going to go quicker than well, for me anyway. Maybe not for you.
You said something, Declan.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, Chris, have you ever played Star Wars Battlefront 2?
I haven't played Battlefront 2, so I played a bunch of Star Wars ones, but not Battlefront 2.
I was going to talk about the space stage in there. It was great, because I used to play it, and because Star Wars Battlefront 1 was all about the battlefield and on the ground and fighting as a troop, but the Battlefront 2 they had the in the space, like the fighting in the space.
On the stations, yeah. Well, that's going to be in Star Citizen, and it's definitely in Squadron 42. So you're on board bigger ships. There'll be first-person combat, and there'll be boarding and stuff.
Yeah, so, I was gonna, because you can get into the fighter pilots and you can get into the bombers. The bombers can take out the communication devices and all the shields and stuff from the outside, or you can fly inside the hangar and take out the power and the generators from the inside. Will that be, because I remember in Battlefront 2 the rooms are very small and there's only a few rooms you could go into. Will you be able to go through the entire ship from the inside?
Yes. So basically any ship in the game that is scale appropriate for that, they'll have rooms and you'll walk around inside. So the smaller ones, the Hornet that you saw in the demo, well, that's a single seat fighter, so obviously you're sitting in your seat. But The bigger ones, like the Constellation, can hold up to 4 people, and it will have has a little hangar bay inside, and have some crew quarters as well as the cockpit, and you can walk around it. I mean, it's not particularly big, but then the bigger ships, like the carrier that you saw in the demo, that's all modeled out. So it has a whole hangar, corridors, rooms inside. You can walk up to the bridge, because if you saw the demo, we were on the bridge for a little bit, and then we jumped down onto the hangar bay. So basically, all the ships, anything that's in space, will be modeled out inside and outside. And so, therefore, if you can walk around it, you would be able to walk around it.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be fun. That's the cool part.
Yeah, I'm gonna love walking around the bridge and everything. It's just gonna be great.
Yep. No, it's my that's one of the reasons why I made this, is I kind of wanted that fantasy. I haven't really sort of seen that all working together. So that's why I'm focusing more of this on the space side, and then later on we can do stuff down on the planet.
Yeah, it's just obviously there was just the technology that needed to be there as well, not just the constraints of publishers.
It's just something that I've always wanted. Like, I think, like in Source, with Half-Life 2, like people used to model, like in the Source SDK, they used to create like space stations and things, and you could have like your own bridge and engineering and things, but it never felt quite right. Like, it never felt alive. Like, there was no NPCs around, or you could never like really interact with the ship, and something that this could really like bring to life.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. I mean, the way it's set up is that there's, it's set up for that. So there's different seats that you can sit down. So, when you're flying the fighter, basically most of the functions are available in the cockpit, that particular seat. But the system's set up in such a way that there can be like the pilot's seat, and then the weapons officer's seat, and the engine guy's seat, or whatever. So you can have it set around, and you can also wander. You go to a turret, and you can sit into that seat, and then just man the turret. So the system's set up to allow multiple people to operate a craft if you need to.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, any other questions, Declan?
I think that's it.
All right, cool. So yeah, again, I think again, thanks for your time. You've been speaking to. My name's Nabil, the co-founder of Gamers Relic. Not exactly a big site yet, but we're getting there. And just my friend here, Declan.
Well, very nice speaking to you guys, and I'll speak to you in the future, eh?
Right, yeah. Thanks for your time.
All right, no problem.
Cheers.
Bye.
See you, Chris.
Bye.